Hey, it's Craig. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Canadian History X early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. A few years ago, during the quarantine phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, I was looking for something to watch. Now, I could rewatch the golden era of The Simpsons for the 200th time, dive back into the exploits of the Bluth family on Arrested Development, or get lost in the meta humor of Community. But then, a show I had never seen before caught my eye: Superstore. Now, I grew up watching The Kids in the Hall, so the fact it had Mark McKinley, it immediately sold me on the show because he was one of my favorite comedic actors. It also featured Ben Feldman, who I enjoyed in Mad Men and Silicon Valley. Fun fact, he and I were born on the exact same day in 1980. I like to think of him as my more successful doppelganger. It had a lot going for it, so I decided to give Superstore a chance, and I quickly became a fan of its sharp humor and biting satire of life in a big box store. And one of my favorite characters was Dina Fox, the no-nonsense assistant store manager at Cloud9. She was hilarious and had a tough exterior that hid a sweet personality underneath. I immediately became a fan of the actor behind the character as well. I'm Craig Baird, and this is Canadian History X Biography. Today I'm talking to one of our country's best comedic actors. This is Lauren Ash. Lauren Ash's journey began on February 4th, 1983 in Belleville, Ontario, and from an early age, she knew she wanted to be an actor. She was in her first play in grade 4 playing Professor Owl in When the Hippos Crash the Dance, and as they say, a star was born. But not just any star, a comedic one. Her funny bone was first tickled at 7 when she watched the movie Clue. The 1985 movie initially received mixed reviews and did poorly at the box office, but like other cult classics, it proved to be ahead of its time. It stars Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, Michael McKean, and Christopher Lloyd, and famously featured 3 different endings which depended on which theater you went to see it in. But for Lauren, it was all about Madeline Kahn's performance.
I remember thinking as a little kid, like, oh wow, the woman is the funniest one in this whole thing. And I remember that really kind of sinking in for me, even as a little kid. And I was like, well, I think before then, maybe my perception was only that men were in the funny roles, or that was the kind of stuff that was being presented. So I remember in that moment going like, oh, I want to do what she does, like full stop.
Madeline Gail Kahn was an American actress, comedian, and singer known for her comedic roles. She was in many films directed by Peter Bogdanovich and Mel Brooks, including What's Up, Doc?, Young Frankenstein, and her Academy Award-nominated roles in Paper Moon and Blazing Saddles. She was a perennial scene stealer and appeared in some of the funniest movies in Hollywood history. And if Lauren was going to follow in her footsteps after she graduated Quinte Secondary School in Toronto, she would need to hone in on her acting skills at George Brown College. She received a full scholarship, but left the school after 4 months because it really wasn't a great fit for her. She says it was all about adjusting towards her true calling.
So I decided that the one class that I had really excelled at was the improv class. And so I quit school and got on the subway in Toronto and rode to the Second City and signed up for classes.
The Second City is the oldest improvisational theater troupe since its debut in 1959 in Chicago. It has training programs and live theaters in Toronto and New York as well, and has become one of the most influential institutions in the English-speaking world. Comedians, award-winning actors, directors, and others in show business have gotten their start at Second City. Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd, Eugene Levy, Catherine O'Hara, Dave Thomas, Colin Mockery, and Lauren Ash. That's because within a year of attending classes, she was hired to perform with the Second City touring company. And at 18 years old, she was the youngest female performer ever hired by the touring company. The only person ever hired younger than her was Mike Myers. Lauren toured with the company for 3 years and then was chosen to perform at the prestigious Chicago main stage. Now at the time, the only other Canadians who had earned that opportunity in the history of Second City Chicago were Lisa Brooke, Mike Myers, and John Candy. She cut her teeth on the stage by performing live sketch comedy and improv 6 nights a week. And one day, Lorne Michaels, the creator of Saturday Night Live, was in the audience. Second City in Chicago and Toronto have always been a major pipeline for talent to Saturday Night Live, but unfortunately, Lorne was not one of them. She said, "He flew out the other women in the show and not me, and I didn't get an audition." The rejection of not getting an audition led Lorne on a new path where she traveled between Toronto and Los Angeles to find work. She typically appeared in shows like Video on Trial, which was a Canadian comedy series on Much Music that consisted of a panel of musicians, comedians, and entertainment columnists critiquing 5 different music videos in a courtroom-esque manner. There was The Wilkinsons, a hilarious 10-part fictional comedy series that followed the lives of Canadian country music stars, The Wilkinsons, and Runaway, an American drama that aired on the CW from September 25, 2006 to October 15, 2006, starring Donnie Wahlberg. As she built her career, she won 2 Canadian Comedy Awards in 2006 and 2007 for Best Female Improviser, and performed with comedy icons like Robin Williams. In 2007, she appeared in her first film in the role of Holly in the acclaimed film Lars and the Real Girl, starring fellow Canadian Ryan Gosling. 2 years later, she appeared in her biggest role to date in How We Do It, a candid camera type of show hosted by comedian Howie Mandel. Lorne played multiple roles to help pull off the practical jokes of the show. And that same year, she became the voice of Sam Goldman on The Dating Guy, an animated series on Teletoon. Her character was the neighbor and friend to the main character, Mark Dexler, and the show won a Gemini Award in 2011 but was cancelled after only 26 episodes. During this time, she also appeared in 6 episodes of The Ron James Show, a Canadian show on CBC starring comedian Ron James, which interspersed filmed and staged sketches with clips of James's stand-up routine. She appeared in the short-lived show Almost Heroes, another Canadian comedy series which centered on the lives of 2 brothers running their late father's comic book store. Lorne was Bernie, a childhood friend of the brothers with a crush on one of them. The role earned her her 3rd Canadian Comedy Award, and she continued to be in demand. From 2010 to 2013, she was in 12 episodes of the prank show Scare Tactics. She also appeared in the period drama Bomb Girls, the supernatural series Lost Girl, and the dark comedy Call Me Fritz, starring Jason Priestley. In 2014, she appeared in Spun Out, a Canadian sitcom starring Dave Foley from the Kids in the Hall fame. For her appearance as Julie Anderson, Lorne won for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series at the Canadian Screen Awards. Lorne said later, "There was one night where I was scrolling through the channels and I was like, I'm on 5 shows at the same time in Canada and no one knows who I am." But people would know her soon after because she was about to get the role of a lifetime. 2015 was a watershed year for Lorne. Not only did she win her 4th Canadian Comedy Award for her role in the Canadian romantic comedy Dirty Singles, that fall, she burst onto her television screens as Dina Fox on Superstore. And from the moment she read the script, Lorne knew that Dina was the perfect character for her.
And I remember that pilot season, that was like the best script I read. And I called my team and I was like, no one else can play this part. And it's very unlike me to be that cocky, but I just felt like very passionately that I was meant to play that role. And casting made me jump through hoops that perhaps, I shouldn't have necessarily had to jump through, given like that I had already been on Super Fun Night, which was an American series that ran for a season. But I said at the time, I was like, I'll jump through the hoops. I don't care. I'll audition as many times as I need to.
As I mentioned earlier, Superstore was an American sitcom that aired on NBC starring America Ferrera and Ben Feldman alongside Lorne as a group of employees working at Cloud9, a fictional big box chain store in St. Louis, Missouri. Lorne was quickly considered the breakout star as she stole almost every scene as Dina, the intense and no-nonsense assistant store manager, and Lorne balanced Dina's no-nonsense attitude at work with her kindness and loyalty to friends. And a lot of that came down to Lorne's charm and comedic chops. She also based part of the character on a character she had created during her time with Second City. And playing Dina was a full circle moment for Lorne in other ways, because her first job was at the now defunct Canadian big box store, Zellers. She said, It's weird that my first job was in a store like this, and 15 years later I'm playing a character on American television who works there. As part of being on Superstore, she got the opportunity to star alongside Canadian comedy royalty once again. Mark McKinney first graced our TV screens as a member of the Kids in the Hall. If you've ever heard someone say, "I'm crushing your head," well, you can thank Mark McKinney for that. And after Kids in the Hall, he spent 2 seasons as a cast member on Saturday Night Live before creating the acclaimed Canadian series Slings and Arrows. He has appeared on countless guest spots on many shows including Corner Gas, and most recently parodying Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on This Hour Has 22 Minutes. And on Superstore, he was the lovable manager of the Cloud9 store, Glenn Sturgis. And Lauren couldn't have been happier. The Kids in the Hall had been appointment viewing for Lauren and her mother as a kid, although she admits she was a bit young for some of the humor on the show. You and me both. She says that as soon as she heard McKinney was cast in Superstore, she called her mother to share the news.
This is like the highest honor. It's like comedy royalty, obviously. And so I remember like day 2, I think, shooting the Superstore pilot. We were shooting a break room scene where we talk about crystal meth. It's a fan favorite scene, and we just improvised, and neither of us had talked about it ahead of time, but we just kind of started to go and improvised, and they let us go for a good, I wouldn't say like 7 or 8 minutes.
After the scene, Mark told her that she had just taught him a course on improv. It was the highest compliment Lauren could have received.
And I had to leave the room because I cried, because I was like, that's like, I can die now. Like, that's the most complimentary thing from like truly one of my idols. So, and then we just, had an amazing time for another 6 years. Playing that dynamic was really fun.
Superstore premiered on November 30th, 2015, and it was a modest hit. During this time, she also appeared in several other shows, including as the voice of Scorpia on She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, American Dad, and Lip Sync Battle. Meanwhile, Superstore aired until March 25th, 2021, and shortly before it ended, Lauren was nominated as Best Supporting Actress in a Broadcast Network or Cable Series by the Hollywood Critics Association TV Awards. However, the show found new life on Netflix during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic and quickly became one of the most popular shows on the streaming platform. Thanks to that exposure, Lauren became a very recognizable face. Suddenly, she was someone Canadians knew, she said. "I really didn't anticipate not being able to go to Eaton Center without having some kind of situation happening." After Superstore ended, Lauren went on to star alongside Gina Rodriguez and Hannah Simone in Not Dead Yet, an American sitcom based on Confessions of a 40-something Blank Up by Alexander Potter. In it, Lauren plays Lexi Rhodes, the boss and the editor-in-chief of the so-called Independent. She's the nemesis of Gina Rodriguez's character, Nell Serrano, a journalist recovering from her life falling apart. And the show premiered on February 8th, 2023, but unfortunately after 2 seasons and 23 episodes, it was cancelled in May 2024. And what few fans knew, though, is that during this time, Lauren was working on a passion project, and she was about to go all in on this dream. Amid her growing success, Lauren was quietly thinking of pursuing a new path that was very important to her: music. She had received her first guitar at 13 years old and used it to write her first songs. And as a teen, she had dreams of being a rock star and even forced her high school assemblies to listen to her songs. She never put that guitar down.
But even when I went into the Second City, I was always kind of the girl with the guitar. I had a comedy song, and I think every main stage review I ever did, it was always a part of what I did. And throughout, working in TV in the States too, at the end of like a long day on Superstore, I would come home and write songs on my guitar in my living room.
As her 40th birthday approached, she said music called to her again.
It's such a part of my life. A lot of people didn't know it was an ongoing part of my life, but that was kind of the moment that I was like, I'm just going to go for it. Like, I'm just going to try it. And it's been like such an amazing experience, so fulfilling.
So she hired a local Los Angeles band, made merchandise, even did a cover shoot in the style of Rolling Stone magazine for posters. All that was left to do was perform a concert. She said, "I invited all my friends and family and basically forced them to watch me play musician for the night, and it was the greatest night of my life. Without exaggeration, I never felt that alive." While she had performed in front of crowds before, she says playing music for them was different.
But I think with playing live music, it's kind of like this energy exchange. I feel like we're kind of creating the show together, if that makes any sense. So like when there's an audience that's standing and cheering and singing along and moving, that is as much of a part of this show being alive as it is my performance. So I think for me, I find it really gratifying playing live music.
As it turned out, one of the band members was also a music producer, and their collaboration led to the release of her first single in 2023, Now I Know. That was followed by the singles Umbrella and Sad This Christmas. Her music career began to pick up steam as she performed on The Kelly Clarkson Show, at the iconic Viper Room and Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, as well as the Phoenix Concert Theatre in Toronto. In September 2025, she released her first album, Call Me When You Get This, which she says she wrote during a very difficult time in her life.
I wrote it over the course of a year, going through kind of a challenging breakup, probably the most challenging breakup I've ever been through. And it was such an amazing kind of outlet for me to get to process my grief through writing songs. The music style is kind of like early 2000s pop punk, kind of a nostalgic feel.
Lauren described the song Cool Story Bro as the letter you write to your ex that you never intend to send when you're at your most petty and mean. The music video of the song features cameos from her Superstore castmates including Ben Feldman, Mark McKinney, and Colden Dunn. The song Whiplash from the same album was nominated for Best Rock Pop Song at the Hollywood Independent Music Awards, and Earmilk magazine said the album was a battle cry and diary that felt like the opening of what was to come from a great emerging artist. In 2026, Lauren will be touring Canada to promote her album, and I'll include a link in my show notes for her website where you'll find dates and ticket info. But if you think she's leaving the small screen behind, you would be mistaken. In September 2025, she began hosting Halloween Bakeshop on the Flavor Network. The show brings together 8 bakers to compete in challenges as they create Halloween-themed baked goods. Lauren says it was the perfect opportunity to be back home after being in Los Angeles for 13 years.
It was an absolute joy to host this show. We had so much fun. I got very invested early on in the competition aspect, rooting for all of these people and their amazing work. And I got to eat a lot of cake, a lot of delicious cake. So it was a bit of a dream come true, to be honest. You never know when you're booking a gig. You never know when the next thing's coming. So just going into the new year, very grateful for this amazing baking show I'm hosting, this amazing music journey I'm on, and excited to see what happens next.
And you can watch Halloween Bakeshop on the Flavor Network and Slack TV. This episode was written by myself, Craig Baird, and my executive producer, Dila Velasquez. Audio production by Rosalind Kufor and Rob Johnston. If this is your first time listening and you like what you heard, please take a moment and give us a 5-star review. And I love hearing from you. And if you have a show topic you want me to cover, you can email me at craig@canadaehx.com. You can also visit my website, as well as my social media. I will include all of those in my show notes. Until next time, I'm Craig Baird, and this was Canadian History X.